So I think humility, modesty in the face of the great unknown is proper in this regard. We do have some explanations, by the way. There may be multiple bubble universes. The history of science shows us that, in fact, our perspective of the world gets constantly larger. We used to think we were at the center and the solar system was the entire universe, and just outside of the furthest planet were the starry heavens, the dome of heavens, and just outside of that were the angels and then God. And since then, over the last 4 centuries, the universe has gotten steadily larger. It has expanded. Physically, yes, it is expanding, but our thoughts about it have also expanded. So the idea that we're the only bubble universe, of course, is still restricting. How do you know we're the only expanding bubble universe? There might be multiple universes. And there is some reason to believe it's possible that whenever a star collapses into a black hole, a collapsing black hole itself creates a new bubble universe. This is one theory for the origins of universes. Why not ask that question and try to answer it scientifically? That is one answer. And to that extent, any universe that would have laws of nature configured in such a way to give rise to atoms would therefore have stars that collapse into black holes and create new universes, new baby universes, so they would be more likely to survive and create more universes that have those particular laws of nature. This is sort of a Darwinian selection process of universes. Those universes that have laws of nature that don't give rise to atoms don't create stars to collapse into black holes. They give rise to no more universes, and they're selected against and they disappear. Now, that's still largely theoretical. There's some decent reasons to believe it might be true, but nevertheless, that's how a scientist thinks about these things. There's this theory, there's this hypothesis. We have to collect more data and test, we'll see. But that is one explanation for the fine-tunedness. And always in science, it's just okay to say, I don't know, and leave it at that. It's okay to have a tolerance for ambiguity and live with it. That's what we do in science. Third, the moral law, starry heavens above, the moral law within. Why should we be good? Where does the sense of morality come from? Well, I wrote a book about this, Science of Good and Evil, on the fact that we're a social primate species in which we have to get along with one another. We have to have some means of conflict resolution, some social forces and pressures that lead us to want to be pro-social, cooperative, altruistic, nice. And we are, most of the time, with most of our fellow in-group members. As you know, though, by watching the news on any given day or studying any period of history, we're also pretty dang tribal. And so it appears that we evolved through these Darwinian mechanisms, good evidence for this now because you can see it in primates, a propensity to be pro-social and cooperative and moral within groups, and fairly xenophobic, competitive, bellicose, and untrusting between groups. So we have within group morality, between group immorality, competitiveness. This is why I think, by the way, Old Testament law has much to say about that sort of thing. Love thy neighbor mostly means your fellow within group members, which is why you can read these nice moral homilies on one page and turn the page and it tells you to rape, pillage, and destroy those creeps on the other side of the river because, you know, they believed in the wrong God. So at least the New Testament's an improvement on that, but we can do better still, I think, which we have over the last 500 years, of extending civil liberties to more people in more places, often in spite of religion, sometimes with the help of religion, sometimes in spite of religion. And so that's where I think morality came from. We can test this in people. You see it. People naturally have a sense of right and wrong. And so too does it appear that chimpanzees and even small, like capuchin monkeys with tiny little brains, the last common ancestor with them, maybe 15 million years ago, we do have, social primates and all social mammals have some sense of a moral right and wrong. And of course, culture tweaks it and so forth. Finally, this idea of God acting in the universe, acting in the world, miracles. Well, a miracle by definition is suspension of natural law. So to one extent, scientists have nothing to say about it because we study natural law. And by definition, a one-off event that could never possibly happen again unless a supernatural entity entered into our natural world and stirred up the particles somehow, cured somebody's cancer or something like this, cannot be on our realm unless you, the believer in miracles, can tell us exactly what happened so we can study it, analyze it somehow. So there are studies on this. Like, for example, do people that are prayed for get better faster than those who are not prayed for. Well, this has been a subject of deep study for the last 20 years. The evidence is overwhelmingly clear. No. Prayed for people don't do any better than non-prayed for people. And of course, people knew this in the 19th century when Charles Darwin's cousin Galton did a study on the longevity of prayed for people versus non-prayed for people. The royal family got prayed for more than anybody in the entire country, and they didn't live as long even as commoners. So apparently it didn't work then, and the definitive study done and published last year, funded by the Templeton Foundation, a pro-Christian organization, showed conclusively that 1,800 heart patients, prayed for group, non-prayed for group, control group, and so on. The prayed for group, not only did they not get better faster or anything like that, they did even slightly worse than the non-prayed for group. The only explanation for this was when they found out that they were being prayed for by professional prayers, they thought, uh-oh, whew, I must really be sick. And maybe that had a sort of a nocebo effect on them. And why is it that miracles always seem to be surrounding things that might have happened anyway, statistically speaking, I mean? First of all, you have the sort of bizarre kind of attribution of miracles like, boy, I was about to board the plane and something happened and I didn't, and the plane went down, and, you know, and I was saved. God really was looking after me. Yeah, but what about the guy that got on the plane instead of you? What, God didn't like him? Doesn't he have a family, people that love him, and now they're suffering instead of your family? What kind of a God would do that? Or something like in 9/11, you see these stories, I turned left instead of right, and I was saved. What about the people that turned right instead of left? God didn't like them? I mean, what does that say about a deity? Is that a kind of God you'd like to believe in that would make those kinds of decisions for us? And I know many of you have probably heard this, and I know John has heard this, but it's not a frivolous argument. What is God a God against amputees? I mean, since the Iraq War began, we have in America just hundreds, if not thousands, of amputees. They've lost limbs. Most of them are Christians. Almost everybody in America is a Christian, right? So these are Christians praying to get better. They have Christian family members who love them deeply, praying for them to get better. Not one of them has grown a new limb. Meanwhile, God is busy causing tumors to go into remission, which, by the way, they just happen to do that on their own anyway. How convenient it is that the miracles always happen to be things that might have happened anyway, and then you back into it by attributing it to the particular God you happen to believe in. The amputee thing is actually pretty serious, and I'll finish with this. When I was in Perth a couple of days ago, I met a neuroscientist working on the regeneration of nerves, spinal cord nerves, to help paralyzed people. And I was encouraged to learn that we're actually making some pretty serious progress here by studying, say, amphibians that do grow, and reptiles that do grow new limbs. Well, first of all, if an amphibian could do it, couldn't an all-powerful God do it? Help these poor soldiers that fought for their Christian country and grow those new limbs? Apparently not. And if a salamander can do it, could we do it? It appears, yeah, we will be able to do this. Probably if it's not 5 or 10 years, maybe it's 50 to 100 years. Whatever it is, we're going to do it. And in fact, this leads me to my final comments. If you go in search of an extraterrestrial, if you go in search of some sort of entity, a being of near infinite power, or even infinite power, what would you call a kind of an extraterrestrial intelligence that we might encounter who is actually able to do genetic engineering and create self-replicating molecules, simple cells, complex cells, multicellular organisms? Look how close we are to solving a lot of these medical issues with stem cells, genetic engineering, now apparently regeneration of nerves. Just in 50 years of research, look how much we've been able to do. What might we be able to do in, say, 500 years or 5,000 years? What would you call an entity that could do that? Well, if you don't know the technology, you'd say, well, that's God. But if you know the technology, then it isn't God. And that's the problem of using any kind of science or reason or logic to try to reason your way to God, is you'll never find a deity. You can only find a super powerful, intelligent being like us, but just slightly more. And so with that, I don't see that there's any reason to believe in God. Thank you.